When you get asked to coach a pro swim team, you're being asked to dedicate 30 to 40 hours of your week while you make no money. I think even if you don't swim fast, if you get good data of what actions should I take from this data, if you can get that, then it was a good meet. All right. Thanks, Reagan. Welcome to episode 20. This is a solo podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about how training has been going with the ASP pros, what they're up to, and some of the mistakes I made last season. I've never actually done a solo episode, and this feels a little bit daunting and scary. And I was actually telling Reagan before this that I'm not sure how it's going to go. But when you have that kind of uncertainty, and when it feels scary and a little bit daunting, not always my default, but I tend to want to run towards it because I don't like having things that might limit me. And so I want to just go right into it. And I was like, Reagan, let's try a solo episode. And so here we are. But before we go into talking about what has been up with the pro team as of late, I kind of have to backtrack and give the backstory on the pro team so we have context. Basically, the pro team started April of last year. We're actually coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the first practice when Calvin and Marina were there. It started off with just Calvin and Marina, and I quickly had to learn how to swim coach April of 2025. I was swim coaching from 2018 to 2021 with the club team that we're currently out of, but that was age group coaching, and I wouldn't really consider it real coaching. It was more I don't want to say babysitting, but it was a lot of administrative stuff, cleaning the pool, and just being an assistant coach. And basically, you don't really call the shots. So you don't really get to test your inputs and outputs. And so I wouldn't really consider real swim coaching. And so last April 2025 was the first time that I actually had to learn how to swim coach, where I'm fully responsible for the inputs and then therefore the outputs. And basically, I kind of had theories about how to swim coach, but those theories were just theories, and I didn't really have a proof of concept. And so that entire first season from April all the way to December at US Open, I was just testing all these theories out. And fortunately, every single athlete that joined the team in 2025 hit a PB. And there was a lot of times and a lot of uncertainty last year where I was like, okay, maybe this doesn't work. And there was a lot of sleepless nights because basically when you're building a brand, and I talked about this in the US Open vlog, when you're building a brand and you're putting out there your training methods and your training methodologies, you're kind of putting it on the line. And so if you don't produce results, you're putting your brand, your reputation on the line. And if it goes all bad, then it's a bad look for your brand. So it was it's pretty high pressure, but fortunately, every single athlete that joined last year hit a PB. And fun fact, it also includes, we've had Zenwei Tiong, who did a training camp with us last year for a couple months. He also swam a PB. And we had an Icelandic 50 freestyler, Simon. He also hit a PB a couple weeks ago, who did a training camp with us for about a week. And they both hadn't swam PBs in a while, and they both swam PBs. So I further got proof of concept that our training system somewhat works. The real true test for me where I was like, okay, this really works, was when Marina Spadoni, when she won a best time at the US Open in December, because she's a 32-year-old woman, hadn't gone a best time in 3 years essentially. And to take someone like her, who's been trying, can't go a best time, at 32 years old, you're able to make them go a best time. I think that is very validating, and I was extremely proud of her for getting it done. And it gave me a lot of confidence that, okay, there is something to this training system where it does work. Because it's not easy to make a 32-year-old woman go a best time who's been trying to go a best time for 3 years. And so Thank you, Marina, for providing me with that confidence that there was proof of concept here. But in 2025, that's not to say I didn't make mistakes. I made a ton of mistakes last year. The first mistake I made was I didn't plan any deloads in the gym. I was actually talking to Josh about this a couple hours ago. I basically went hard for, I think it was like 14 weeks or something like that. We didn't have any deloads. It was just go, 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 go. GPP, strength phase 1, strength phase 2, no deloads. And what ended up happening was we got a ton of, I don't want to call them like serious injuries, but couple overuse, just annoying injuries where we had to take a couple days easy, and not do the full workout. And we had a lot of that last year. And I take full responsibility for that. I think I needed to have more breaks, have more deloads in there. The other thing I didn't do a good job of is I didn't reset with GPP phases throughout the season. It was just kind of GPP, phase 1, phase 2, taper, US Open. And I think I should have had, weeks in there, or at least 1 week in there where we kind of deload and then do a reset with a GPP block, which we'll do this upcoming season. I'll talk about that later. The other mistake I made was I think we swam too much. We were swimming 6 times a week. And I say that because we were swimming Monday to Saturday, and we would go hard Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday was easy. And a lot of the Wednesday practices, I would write them on Tuesday. And when I was writing them, I was kind of like, I kind of wish they would just chill at home and rest, because Tuesdays are big days for us. We would go destro, we would go 25s off the blocks, we'd go 35s off the blocks, and then we would come in the weight room and do a big weight room session. So it's a high neural day, and I knew it would take a while to recover. And I kind of wished that Wednesday, like, we just swam for 10 minutes and then got out. But I couldn't do that because we had multiple people driving over an hour to get to us. And I didn't want them to drive over an hour just to swim for 10 minutes and then get out. And so I ended up writing like a whole easy practice with drills and stuff on Wednesdays. And at the end of the season last year, I was thinking about the microcycle, and I was like, we could probably do without the Wednesday workout, and it would actually be for the better. And so we modified it to where we initially started off with just 3 swim practices per week, and then we bumped it up to 4, and then now we're at 5. And even 5 right now, I'm kind of like, maybe we don't need a 5th. I'm going to kind of observe it for a little bit longer to make my final decisions. But 5 seems to be okay. That Wednesday off seems to be good, and they come back fresh on Thursday. So that was mistake number 3. Those are mainly the 3 mistakes I made, and they all culminated in these kind of annoying injuries. There weren't serious injuries, but enough to where we would have to take a day or 2 off or go easy. So in order to not make those same mistakes again this year, the first 4 weeks of January, or I guess the entire month of January, not the first 4 weeks of January, we did a big GPP block because I wanted to use January to set up for the rest of the year. And so I thought really hard about what this GPP block needs to be. And I wanted it to be where they're really building robustness for the rest of the season. And so we would go to the gym in January. We went to the gym Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then we only swam on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it was 3 swims, 3 gyms, all of Saturday. And I didn't come up with it, but I've seen Dr. Yesis's 1x20 protocol, GPP protocol, and when I came up with it because whenever I would do a GPP phase, if I was coming off a swim meet, or if I was coming off a jiu-jitsu competition, or if I had been on vacation for a while and I hadn't trained in a while, the way I intuitively would come back into training is do a high volume single joint exercises with a ton of variety. So for example, I would do, high volume bicep curls, high volume tricep extensions, high volume hip extensions, anything that was not neurally taxing and single joint. I would just do high volume to just kind of prep the tissue, prep the joints for heavier training later on. And I was doing that intuitively because I would go to the gym and I'd be like, well, I'm not really prepared to go heavy cleans because I haven't done anything. And so I would just do things that would prepare either my hips or lower back for heavier deadlifts later on in the season. And I was like, okay, if I'm doing that with myself, why am I not doing that with our athletes? And then I remembered, oh yeah, Dr. Michael Yes's, he has this 1x20 protocol. And so I took that and I converted it into to be more swimmer specific. And then I also added overcoming ISOs because we know there's research about overcoming ISOs and how that helps tendon health and strength preservation and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that's the GPP protocol that I came up with for January. And I'm actually extremely proud of how I wrote that and how it turned out, and how the athletes have expressed how good they feel after doing it. And so while I was actually coming up with the podcast notes for this, I had an idea for the podcast listeners. I asked Thibaut, if you guys know who Thibaut is, he's our COO. He runs all the operation side of things. I sent him a message. He lives in Paris. I said, hey, can you make a discount code for our podcast listeners for all the digital programs? And so he did it in like 3 minutes. It's actually insane how quickly he does these things. But yeah, so if you guys want to check out that GPP program or any other programs, just use code podcast10. It'll get you 10% off any of the digital programs. And that's just a way to say thank you for watching these episodes and supporting the podcast. And actually, we started selling these digital programs and ASP SWIM. ASP SWIM is our swim subscription that we have as a way to financially support the team, because we actually lose a ton of money coaching the pro team. I don't know if people know this, but so we've had to find other ways to monetize because we actually don't make money directly from the pros. We try to monetize it in other ways, like the digital programs, like ASP Swim. And I've discussed about why that is in other podcasts. If you go to I did a podcast with Brian Lundquist on the Social Kick podcast. If you guys check it out there, I kind of go into that. But essentially, when you get asked to coach a pro swim team, you're being asked to dedicate 30 to 40 hours of your week and Monday to Saturday while you make no money. And for a business owner who works 6 to 7 days a week, you're being asked to work 30 to 40 hours a week and make no income. That, when you look at it from an economic standpoint, sounds absolutely insane. And it's actually why you don't see a lot of pro teams outside of nationally funded federations or that is tied to a collegiate system. So most pro teams are either tied to a national federation or a college system, because with the pro team, you need infrastructure to support it from an operations standpoint, from an economic standpoint. Luckily, we were at a point with ASP where we had the infrastructure to support a pro team. I had pool space connections, which is actually huge, because if you've ever tried to rent from a pool, you know how much of a nightmare that is. We don't pay anything for pool rent, which is absolutely insane, and I'm very grateful for. And the only way we could do that is because I had previous connections with the former team that I grew up on and was coaching on. Had it not been for that, I really don't know how we can make a pro team work otherwise, because some other places, they're going to charge us, 8, 10, 15K for a month to use the pool. And so, you have to, have the capacity to give up 30 to 40 hours of manpower per week, plus free pool rent, which is unheard of. And we, ASP, happen to have both of those. And so, the 30 to 40 hours a week, they're spent between, actually swim coaching on deck, actually, being in the gym, being a strength coach, preparing practices, preparing lifts, which actually takes a while because you have to individualize everything based on mobility and force plate data and all that kind of stuff. And meetings with Dr. Josh, communicating about athletes, communicating with Kenta, doing the meet entries, traveling for meets. It takes a lot of energy and just pure man hours. And when I dedicate 30 to 40 hours of my week, that also means I have to pay for the coaches to cover my sessions that I used to do in the gym, because I used to run and coach a bunch of sessions in the gym before we had a pro team, because that was primarily how I lived. And so in order for me to step away from the gym, there was a period I was doing both, and that was really crazy. But I've since then removed myself from ASP, the gym, because it's almost impossible to do both. And when you do that, you have to pay for the labor to make the gym run. And that means there's financial opportunity cost there. The other thing is, when you work 30 to 40 hours a week for free for the next 2.5 years until the Olympics, that's actually a huge risk if you don't monetize it somehow. Because if you don't monetize it, there's two risks that it poses. There's opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is basically, if I'm spending my time here, could I make more money or have bigger opportunities if I were to do something else? So the example would be like, okay, if I was actually just coaching the gym as I was, would I, make more money or make the business bigger or whatever, if I'm doing the pro team? So that's opportunity cost. The other one is just straight up financial risk, because we're spending money on meets, traveling to meets, because we're spending money on coaches and not having income. There's a huge risk that poses. And as the CEO of the company, I have to think about, the people that work for ASP, the people who depend on ASP for their income, for their livelihood. And so we had to, when I got asked this in April, I had to quickly think, okay, yes, I can do it, but there's these big risks that are going to come from it. How am I gonna dedicate and remove myself from the gym and still make money for the company and keep food on the table for the people who work at ASP? And so that's where kind of the Road to LA series started. That was our way to elevate the brand. And then we also came up with ASP Swim. Okay, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to write swim practices anyways. And if I'm gonna build a brand, I can foresee that people are gonna ask, what are they doing? And so I was like, okay, we'll just put it up on a subscription and have people subscribe. Fun fact, if you just type ASP, name of whoever is on our team, that actually gets you a discount for the subscription. I think it's 50% off for the first month. And that, if you use their code, it actually pays them and it supports them. So I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to bias anybody. But if you know the names of our athletes and you want to support a specific person, type ASP, their name, and they make money. The athletes make money. We don't make money. The athletes make money if you use their code. And we did that as a way to financially support the athletes. So we came up with ASP Swim. We came up with the digital programs, because I had to write the lift programs anyways. I had to template it. And so we put those up so that people can see what the athletes are doing. And it financially supports ASP as a whole so that we can continue to run this pro team. Also, last week we found out, we didn't know this, but when you have pro athletes within your organization, you have different insurance requirements. And so our insurance bill actually went up, or will go up, for our premium will go up. And so there's actually a lot of, economic difficulties that come with running a pro team that we've had to figure out how to do. And luckily we had the infrastructure to be able to do that. And so, we were, the code podcast 10, you guys can use it, but know that helps support the athletes and it helps us run everything and keep everything afloat. Anyways, that kind of went off on a tangent, but in 2026 so far, we've had 2 swim meets. We've had a short course yards meet that we did in Coronado on Valentine's Day. It was a training meet. that we went down to, and I signed up for it. It was kind of an age group meet, and I signed up for it because we didn't really have any other swim meet options in February, and I just wanted to see where everybody was at and get an accurate understanding of how I needed to change up the training or whatnot. So we drove down to Coronado. Unfortunately, they didn't have a wedge, and some people might say, "Oh, like, who cares? Just man up. It's a wedge." But when you're talking about the 50 freestyle, where zero point 0.2 seconds is a big difference, not having a wedge actually is a big factor. Obviously, when we're at the meet, I'm not going to be telling the athletes, "Hey, we don't have a wedge, so you're going to swim slow." But it was in the back of my mind for sure. So I wasn't super stoked about that because we didn't really get a super accurate understanding of where they were. But a couple of good things came out of going to that swim meet. One, it was good training. I think, going to a swim meet, you're never going to replicate being in a meet environment versus in a practice environment. So I thought it was good training. It was good team bonding to just kind of go out and go to a travel meet in San Diego. But yeah, it was good training. The second thing was Nat swam a PB in the 100 breaststroke. Not her best event, but it's always good to swim any kind of PB in any kind of situation. And the funny part was I threw Calvin in a 50 butterfly. Calvin's never done butterfly, never trained butterfly. He's never done a 50 long course butterfly. I just threw him in just to have an extra swim because I didn't want to go all the way down to Coronado just to do a 50 free. And I was like, okay, neural load is neural load. So there's a 50 fly on that day. Let's throw him in the 50 butterfly. I threw him in the 50 butterfly. He swam pretty well. He went a 21.3. Was it 21.3? Yeah, I think it was a 21.3. We didn't think anything much of it at the moment. The meet was on Saturday. On Sunday, it was funny. I was because we're down in San Diego, I took my kids down to Legoland the following day because I was like, oh, we're here. Might as well make a trip out of it. And as we were driving to Legoland, Calvin calls me and he goes, "Brother, what do you?" The Commonwealth Games trials cuts just came out, and the cut is 23.3, 50 long course butterfly. I just went 21.3 yards. What do you think? And I go, interesting. And so I think that week I had already submitted the Westmont Pro Swim entries already, just the 50 free for Calvin. But I think that following Monday, I entered him in the 50 fly for Westmont, and Calvin at this point had never done a 50 butterfly. So that was good. Like we discovered that Calvin could potentially have a good butterfly out of that meet. So after that, we went to Westmont, obviously, and Nico went to the Serbian Open in Serbia. It was actually on that same weekend. If you guys want to check out the highlights from that, it's season 3, episode 3 is the Westmont vlog. We didn't rest for it, but we had a great meet. Nat, she swam a PB in the 50 fly and 50 free, and it's funny because I knew that she was going to swim PBs at this meet, even though we weren't rested, just based off the training times she had been doing the week prior. Actually, like the 2 weeks prior, she was swimming lights out. And so I was like, okay, if she's swimming these in training, she's probably going to swim best times at Westmont. And sure enough, she did. Calvin also swam PBs, or one PB, or actually, I guess 2 PBs, because the 50 butterfly was his first time. He was 23.6 in the 50 fly. Unfortunately, we didn't get the Commonwealth trials cut, or the Commonwealth cut, which he needs a 23.3, but he has another shot in 2 weeks. He just flew to South Africa today, actually. So we have another shot at that, but he swam a best time in the 50 free. He dropped 0.08. It's actually pretty crazy because Calvin, it was like April 26th or something was his first practice. And off the bat, I was like, we're going to time trial a 50 freestyle. If you guys want to check that one out, it's actually season 1, episode 1 of Road to LA is this practice where Calvin went 23.5 in the 50 free time trial in practice. In May, he went 23.19 in prelims. He was 23.10 at finals. In July of last year, he went 22.89 at LAI. And then we went down to sectionals again in July. He went a 22:63 in prelims. That's season 1, episode 8, if you guys want to check that out. The same meet at finals, he went 22:43. And then he went to nationals by himself in August, where he was 22:38. I believe Calvin vlogged that on his channel. So if you guys want to check that out, that's there. And then in season 2 finale at US Open in December of last year, he was 22:11. And then Westmont last month, he was 22:03. So knock on wood, but Calvin has dropped at every single meet that we've attended so far. And hopefully we continue to ride that train for as long as we possibly can. Marina also at Westmont, she swam pretty well. She swam faster than she did at Worlds. At Worlds, she was, I think, 27.6 or something in the 50 fly. She was 26.8 at US Open, which was the best time. And then she swam at 27.0 in Westmont. So that's a great swim, not being rested at all. Santi qualified for the South American Games in 50 and 100 fly. And we got good data regarding his underwater kicking. And so I think even if you don't swim fast, if you get good data of what actions should I take from this data, if you can get that, then it was a good meet. I think data is useless unless you know what actions are you going to take. A lot of people just take data to take data, but I believe that you have to have concrete actions that you're going to take from that. Otherwise, it's useless. And with Santi, we got some good data. Bria, she went 110.1 in a 100 breast time trial, and she hasn't touched 110 in a long time, which she discussed in our last podcast. Ever since she has bilateral epicondylitis, which is where your epicondyles get inflamed, and so she had to take a long time off. And look, she swam pretty fast. She was 110.1 and 31 in the 100 in the 50 breast, so that was pretty good for her. Lincoln was only 0.1 off his best time in the 50 breaststroke. He took some time off because he was having some arterial issues in his shoulders. We thought it was a shoulder injury, but it wasn't a shoulder injury. It actually has to do with his arteries. I won't go too deep into it, but for him to be only 0.1 off after taking 6 months off, not bad at all. This was Michael Andrews' first meet since we started working together. His US Open in December was not good at all. And so for him to go 27.0 in the 50 breaststroke, 00, or did he go 59? I can't remember. But anyways, Peter, his father, and I, we were saying how pleasantly surprised we were with how quickly he bounced back from US Open. And because US Open was not good at all. And so we were very, very pleasantly surprised to see how quickly he swam at Westmont. Caleb, unfortunately, got a little bit under the weather at the meet. He doesn't want to admit that, and he'll tell me that to my face. But Steve and I agree that when you're laid up in a hotel bed for 2 days, you're probably not going to swim as fast. But he still swam at 22.2. Obviously, it's not where we want to be. And what he was really stoked about was that he swam faster in finals he was 22.6 in prelims, 22.2 in finals, and he said he hadn't done that in a while, so that was pretty cool. And Nico at the Serbian Open, unfortunately, his grandfather was not doing too well, and so he already had his flight to Serbia booked, but he had to make it. He had to go earlier because his grandfather wasn't doing too well, and unfortunately, his grandfather passed while he was there. But the really, really cool thing that happened was Nico swam his first best time in 9 years after having all of that. So his grandfather passed, and then the meet was like a week or two after that. His fiance was there, his family was there, his whole family was there, and he was able to not only swim his first best time in 9 years, but also become Serbian Open champ in front of his entire family after what his family just went through. And you can only imagine what kind of emotions that would, that was probably going through Nico's mind. And he was hyped. There's a video I posted on my Instagram of him celebrating, which is really, really cool. And that one's special, I think, not just for him, but for myself too. Looking forward in terms of meet schedule, Nat actually has Hong Kong trials this weekend. We actually elected not to fully rest for that, and it's actually the Asian Games trials. So she has that this weekend. If the times that she's sending me that her coach is taking over there are true, then she should swim lights out this weekend. We shall see. Calvin, he's probably in the airplane right now as we speak. His flight was like 2 hours ago, I think, or took off 2 hours ago. He's got South African trials in 2 weeks, so he's going now so he can acclimate to the time zone. On May 20th, the weekend of May 20th, we've elected to go to the Grand Challenge at Woolip instead of the Sacramento Pro Series because of the aforementioned costs that come with traveling to meets. And then we are going to the Irby Invite, which is at our pool, June 5th to June 7th. So I put this up on my Instagram, but if you guys want to come race the ASP Pros, which I've gotten requests for that before on my Instagram, come check out Irby Invite. All you need is a USA Swimming, USA Swimming certification or membership. That's all you need. You can be outside the LSC and you can still race at this meet. So if you want to come race the ASP Pros, come check out the Irby Invite. I don't make money off this meet. The ASP doesn't make money off this meet. I'm just saying this because I want to help the team that's given us so much. They've given us pool space to train at. And so I want to give back value to the team that is helping us so much. And I know that for teams, hosting swim meets is important to make money. And so I want to just help the team break the attendance record for this meet. But also, the Irby Invite is special to me because John Urbanchek, the meet who this meet is named after, was a highly influential person in my own coaching career. John actually helped co-found FAST back in the 70s in 1976. And obviously, if you're in the swimming world, you know who John Urbanchek is. And John was actually the first person in my life to tell me that I had potential as a swim coach and that I should consider swim coaching. I believe this was the summer of 2016 or 2017. I came home to just kind of work a part-time job and coach over the summer. John was there, and I actually remember exactly where we were standing. So if you know where the fast pool is, if you look at the it's the northeast corner of the pool, we were standing there, and John was like, "Hey, you have potential as a coach. Maybe you should do this as a living." And when a person like that tells you that, you you know it's serious because it's obviously John Urbanchek. If it was like some 12-year-old telling me that, it wouldn't be as influential. But when John Urbanchek tells you that, you take that to heart. And so I still remember exactly where we were standing when he told me that. So this meet, is special just because of that for me. And so if you guys want to race, if you don't have a long course meet in June, come check out Irby Invite in Fullerton, June 5th to June 7th. And then after that, we're going to go to SMOC, the Swim Meet of Champions down in Mission Viejo, June 17th. Instead of the Indianapolis Pro Series, we'll go to LAI July 10th. And then Zen Weitiong and Calvin, hopefully, we'll find out in a couple weeks, have Commonwealth Games July 24th. That same weekend is the Central and Caribbean Games for Marina and Maddie, who is our remote athlete from Bermuda. And then July 28th is Nationals. I believe it's in Irvine. That'll be the main meet for the year for Maxine and Caleb for us. August 12th is Pampax. Santo is scheduled to go to Pampax, and I've been asked to be on the Taiwanese coaching staff. I actually just submitted all my passport stuff a couple weeks ago, or couple days ago rather. I have this relationship with the Taiwanese Federation because back in 2014 and 2015, I had the goal to represent Taiwan at the Rio Olympics. Obviously, that didn't end up happening, but I established relationships with the Taiwanese Federation because of that. And I was actually able to leverage that relationship to have a training camp in Taiwan before Worlds last year with Marina. So Marina and I went to the University of Taipei. We did our training camp there to get accustomed to acclimate to the time zone over there, because I had the previous relationship. And they actually asked me last month if I would take 3 of their best athletes and coach them remote, and also have a training camp here in the US before Pan Pacs. And so they'll be here for, I think it's like a month and a half or 2 months before Pan Pacs in the summer. And so, yeah, I'll be going to Pan Pacs as part of the Taiwanese Federation. And unlike me representing El Salvador, it's funny. I got some funny looks when from other people when I said I was representing El Salvador, because you never see an Asian man representing El Salvador. But this time around, I'm actually Taiwanese, so it kind of makes sense, and I'll look the part. And then September 13th to September 16th is South American Games. Santi is set to go. And then September 20th is Asian Games in Tokyo. The South American Games is actually really cool because it's in Santa Fe in Argentina, which is Santi's hometown. So that's a really special games for Santi to be able to do that in his hometown and represent his country in front of his family. September 20th, Asian Games in Tokyo. Zen and Nat and the Taiwanese athletes I will coach are set to go there. We have a ton of different meets that people are preparing for. If you've been following ASP Swim, you know that I post all our workouts there. You will see that I've had a bunch of different workouts. I was actually joking to, was it Kenta? Maybe it was Nico. I can't remember. But on Monday, I think we only had like 8 athletes or something. But then we had 5 different practices going on. Which is pretty crazy to think about. And the reason for that is because all these people have different meets that they're preparing for. And I believe that in order to maximize the stimulus that you're applying, you have to not fully individualize, but take individual considerations into their programming to do that. And it's hard work. It takes a lot of time to write these practices and to administer them, and to also just think about who needs to do what when, and I have to think about this guy's left ankle and that person's shoulder flexion, and it's a lot to run the pro team and also run the business, because it almost feels like I have 2 full-time jobs. Like, one is being the head coach of a pro team and the head strength coach of a pro team, but also remembering that, I have to train staff, and I have to have meetings with Thibaut about financial statements, and talk about insurance policies, and buy equipment for the gym. And, it does feel like it's two different jobs completely. And it's challenging and it's exhausting. But at the same time, it feels like exactly what I should be doing. Like my whole life was kind of it was preparing me to handle this and to take on this challenge. It really feels like that. And I say that because when I was 13 years old, and I know this because I have evidence of it in a notebook, I started training my 3-year-old brother, Skylar, at the time, who was 10 years younger than me, because I was obsessed with training, and I was obsessed with maximizing human potential. And so I have a notebook at home that I still have, and I keep it as a reminder to this day and mind you, Skylar is 3 years old at this time, and I was 13. I have his bicep circumference. I have his thigh circumference, his waist circumference, chest circumference, his hand size, his body weight, his height. I made him, we used to live on this block, and I would make him run around. I would actually make him and Sid run around the block, and I would track their block run time on my notepad and my notebook, so I can see what their progression was like in terms of their running. And so like for ASP, like all of our athletes, we have performance reports that we print out for every single athlete, and it has all their swim times and how much their swim times have improved over the course of being with us, and their 1 rep max weight to pull up, their squat jump height, their wattage on the assault bike. We have all these metrics that we print out for the athletes, and we do that now within the business model. But I had been doing this since I was 13 years old, and so it really feels like my whole life I was preparing to do this as my career. Another example is I took Algebra 2 twice in high school because I failed it once. And I really think the first time was because the only thing I can think about as I was sitting in Algebra 2 was how I was going to improve in swimming. And I was so in love with the sport and so obsessed with the sport. And all I wanted to do, I didn't care about order of operations or whatever you learn in Algebra 2, that I wouldn't pay attention. And I would actually, I had my G-Shock, and there was a couple things I would do in Algebra 2. One is I would practice my breath holding so that I can do something to improve while I was sitting here, because this was, learning about, I don't even know what you learn about in variables in Algebra 2. I didn't think it was useful, and so I would hold my breath during Algebra 2 to practice my breath holding so that I would have a better hypoxic capacity when I was racing. And the other thing I would do is I would calculate splits for my different races and how I could swim, how I could split races. So I would use the is it the TI-84 calculator, the Texas Instruments, right? I would use that calculator instead of doing Algebra 2. I'd be calculating splits on that. And that's why I failed Algebra 2. And I took it twice. All this to say, I've been obsessed with training, and yeah, it feels like hard work, and there's lots of sleepless nights, and there's a lot of stress, pressure, responsibilities. I work every waking hour. I'm either working or working out. And it's a lot, but at the same time, I feel like my entire life was leading up to this. And so it feels very fulfilling at the same time. So, lots to be blessed about. But yeah, looking ahead, my to-do list for the week, I need to write strength phase 3. So right now we're on season. So if you go to our website, go train online, go to digital programs, we organize the digital programs by the Road to LA seasons. And so we never wrote digital programs in season 1 because it was just Calvin and Marina. And so I was just kind of like individualizing for them. But ever since we had a team, I have a template that I write out first. I copy and I paste the template into each athlete's calendar. And then from there, I do the individualization for each athlete based on the data. And so the digital programs that we have on our website, it's the template that I initially write. So one of the tasks on my to-do list for the week is to write strength phase 3, which is going to start. Today is Tuesday, April 7th. And so strength phase 3 actually starts on Monday, April 13. And couple changes I'm going to, or not changes, or how I'm going to set up strength phase 3 is it's going to be a 6-week program, because I made it 6 weeks because that's how long we have until Grand Challenge. And I actually think you want to plan I was speaking about deloads earlier. Strategically, I think it makes sense to plan deloads around these meets that you have throughout the season. A lot of kind of the old school traditional way of thinking is you never want to taper until the very end. But if you were, if you're brought up in the strength world, that deloads they have a time and place, and they're useful. Actually, there's kind of two camps. Like there's one camp that is you don't need deloads at all if you program and periodize correctly. And then there's the other camp that says that you need deloads. I kind of tend to err on the side of you do need deloads because of just based off observation. Obviously last season we went 13 weeks straight without a single deload, and I didn't like how that worked. So that's why I'm kind of erring towards the side of you do need deloads throughout the season. And so why wouldn't you strategically place them where you have meets? And obviously Grand Challenge is not a big meet for us. It's really kind of a training meet, but I wanted to schedule my deload around Grand Challenge. And so it's a 6-week, Strength Phase 3 is going to be a 6-week program. And I was mentioning earlier in the intro that I want to do a GPP reset throughout the year. And so we're actually deloading right now. We have a meet this weekend, this Saturday, Sunday. It's an age group meet at FAST, at the pool that we train at. And then next week will be a GPP. So out of the 6 weeks, week 1 is GPP. I'll probably do the 1x20 protocol again with some overcoming ISOs. And then weeks 2 to 4 is going to be strength development. And I'll probably have a gradual ramp up and not just go hard from week 2, because 4 weeks is actually what I've come to realize. It's actually a long time to have high neural outputs over and over and over again. It's actually a long time to do that for 4 weeks. So I think I'm going to do a gradual ramp up in terms of volume so that it's not so intense for 4 weeks. Like week 2 will probably it'll still be strength development, but it'll be a little bit on the easier side. And then it'll ramp up for 4 weeks. And then week 6 will be a deload in preparation for Grand Challenge. And so if you guys are interested or curious to see how all of that will play out, Sid will probably make a Road to LA season 3. That'll probably be like episode 6 or something. You guys will find out there. But yeah, this is the end of the solo podcast. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys like the solo episodes? Should I do more of it? If you want me to do more of them, please let me know in the comments. It's super helpful when people leave feedback. If you hated it, let me know. I actually enjoy, the negative hate comments. I thrive off those. So if you hated it, also let me know. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week for episode 21. Thanks.